So finally on our panel we have Frits van der Waal, who is in the Department of Sustainable Economic Development in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands, but has also been very active in European-wide debates on this issue. So, Frits.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was lured into this panel yesterday evening after a few glasses of wine, so I don't know whatever, but I'm very happy and to be in this group of people which we've been in before. Yeah, it's true. I mean, we as the Netherlands, we are a relatively very small player to all these big gorillas next to me. But I think the organizers noted that there are at least, I think, 10 organizations from the Netherlands somewhere in this public. So, I mean, when they traced me, I think they said, okay, let's not frustrate that small player. Well, what have we are doing? We are finally, gradually growing into this issue in a way which I think is quite typical for a small player like we are. We don't believe that we can do these things on our own. We try to be sneaky in alliances, in partnerships, etc., etc. So when we had our first, when I joined the ministry after having worked in Africa for 20 years, about, was it 2001, there was this policy which was called In Business Against Poverty. Well, that was something very revolutionary because we also had entered the sectoral approach, and it was purely social sectors, etc. This whole thing of economic development and agriculture was hardly on the agenda, at least from the Netherlands, and many donors, which are, I think, around this table. And land was really singled out as one of the preconditions for pro-poor economic development. And well, with my background as in Africa, etc., I took up that issue, and I was again over there, but I was not lured into. I was strategically trying to be part of that EU working group which had been formed to work on the EU guidelines in order to counterbalance Klaus Deininger and his team on the other side of the Atlantic. We really wanted to try to convince Klaus and his colleagues that this land market thing was not the solution, etc., etc. So we intruded in his system of big regional conferences. I remember the one in Kampala. We as bilateral donors, including DFID, we brought all kind of partners there, from farmers' organizations, whatever. I think Robert was also in one of these meetings involved. And I think that really helped to have a better World Bank report, but also us, in order to have our EU guidelines, which were an instrument just to describe, well, to guide, let's say, our staff at the embassies, in the delegations, in the countries, in order to look upon this issue of land tenure security from various angles, from the gender angle, from the environment angle, from the economic angle, from the human rights angle, because it's not an issue where you have land tenure specialists in each and every embassy. I mean, this is an issue which is multi-sectoral, etc., etc. So you need to be strategic in this whole thing. So that is what we tried, and from there on we were quite happy. I mean, Camilla and Paul were in that EU working group as well. I mean, and we are still somehow very much together, I must say, in this battle. And well, from there on in the Netherlands, we thought, okay, now we also have to invest a bit. I mean, this was time, and we were in a very steep learning curve. And well, I remember a few meetings we had organized, also again with many partners which are here around the table, in order to have discussions with our private sector, for instance, with the Cadastre International, which are in many countries active, in order to have deep debates whether they were doing the right things. We talked about titling here. I mean, that was 5-6 years again. Well, it was still very honest. And then in 2005, they were very, very honest. They said, look, we are making a lot of money with all these programs, but we know that we are contributing to issues which are not proper. Because there are hardly countries where we work where there is a fair land policy, where there are land laws which are really, let's say, properly spelled out, and which are in a democratic process being formulated. So that is something which we learned from that as a government. We should focus on that trajectory. So we became a partner of the International Land Coalition, which we found a very important player in order to strengthen all kinds of organizations in those countries in order to put this issue on the agenda. We also remember the big meeting we had with with the ISS, we had meetings on gender and conflict and all. This whole issue of land really came up. And then in 2007, we made an inventory of what all Dutch players we could trace were actually doing in this field of land tenure security. The NGOs, the universities, the private sector, we as a government, because we found out that quite some embassies, luckily, were still thinking and trying to align with the real problems in countries, and they had put under whatever kind of label, they continued in trying to assist land tenure security processes in countries. So that was really a very important tool to bring all these various players, at least in the Netherlands, together and mirror them very much and link them up to all kinds of other actors in other countries. I think, well, what are we actually doing at this very moment? We don't have a land policy. We don't think we need a land policy. We still have those EU guidelines on land policy design and land administration. And we think that the principles of how to contribute to structural land tenure security are still very valid. And so we still think, and therefore I think we follow quite what Klaus has been mentioning there. If you really can support in-country actors who which are important players to either put issues on the agenda or to strengthen institutions to make things work, that is in our way, I think, very important. So we are, at this moment, we are a strategic partner of the ILC. We are supporting GRAIN financially. We're having about 10 embassies at this very moment active with all kinds of partners in countries. At headquarters we have quite a number of programs which have the land issue on board. On gender we have an important, we are working together with the IID. But the thing which I think is very nice to share with you is what last year we have launched, what we call an academy, LandDec we call it, www.landgovernance.org. And in that academy we have, as government, we cooperate with 6 other partners, being Royal Tropical Institute, Utrecht University, Wageningen University, Africa Study Center, GIVOS, one of the major NGOs on human rights, Agriterra, our farmers, our organization, strengthening farmers organizations, and Trio des Facettes from the private sector, very much involved in financial issues, etc., etc. So we as a team, it's an open academy, and we are organizing debates in the ministry. We are having a number of studies, let's say, sourced out in the south with partners. We have a couple of PhDs which we are supporting and using to bridge this and to strengthen the partnership amongst those players which are important and which are together here, I think, today. So, to end, we are also in a huge struggle of new government and less budget and whatever. But it's also in our country, and that is why these kind of waves are there, we know. We are back on food security, integrated water resource management, and whatever the Dutch are going to support needs to have a causal relations with these kind of priorities. So my conclusion is, our conclusion is that the issue of land governance is really in the core of, let's say, many of these kind of priorities we have put there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.